Hi, I'm Neil Howe, head of Hedgeye's Demography sector. I just did a call on the future of Bitcoin, and I just want to recap 3 big points from the presentation. The first point is a simple one. The people who have been promoting Bitcoin most enthusiastically behind it say it's going to be our next currency. It's going to compete with the great reserve currencies of the world. I've looked at this, and my conclusion is no, probably not. And the reason is Bitcoin does not fit anywhere on the currency spectrum. Historically, all currencies have been backed either by some tangible asset, like a barter economy moving into a gold standard, or by a sovereign decree, public debt evolving into fiat currency. Bitcoin checks neither box. It is not a commodity. It doesn't represent anything real on the one hand, and it does not, and it will never be endorsed by governments or states or public leaders on the other because of the crypto part of the cryptocurrency, because it's anonymous and therefore prevents the public from knowing a lot about what's going on with the people who are using it. In the piece, we discuss a lot about scarcity and the rarity of Bitcoin and the comparisons with gold, and Bitcoin even uses terms like miners and mining. They like this analogy with gold, and kind of the limitations of that, as well as talking about why government has an interest in knowing who's transacting. The second big point I make is that when it does come to looking at currency as a means of transaction, Bitcoin is not terribly good at a store of value of a unit of account, particularly as it's been so incredibly volatile. But when it comes to actually using it as a means of exchange, the only area where I see that Bitcoin has a huge, indisputable comparative advantage over other currencies is in the realm of illicit activity. And criminal activity has actually been attracted to Bitcoin ever since the start on what's called the dark web, where you can go to stores and make transactions using a location stripping browser like Tor and paying with an anonymous kind of currency like Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin is a staple of everything from trafficking and weapons to extortion and espionage. It's used by states evading sanctions like North Korea and Iran. It's used by tax evaders. It's used by Chinese trying to get their assets out of the country. China has capital export controls. And all of these things together, and I do a quantitative comparison here, could easily explain most of Bitcoin's actual use as a means of exchange, well over half. So that's my second point. The final point is a point simply about the next generation. I think when people a lot of times talk about millennials and younger people liking Bitcoin, and to some extent that's true. Millennials are attracted to Bitcoin. It's a algorithm-driven, democratized, decentralized currency. They like that. It's geeky. It's techy. Boomers don't understand it. And they are more likely to use it. However, when it comes to the entire generation, only small minorities of any generation actually use Bitcoin. And I think there are a couple traits, or say attitudes that are very strong in millennials, which actually mitigate or militate against there being huge favors of Bitcoin in its current form. One is risk aversion. Millennials are famously risk averse in their choice of financial assets. They even think that credit cards are dangerous. They think stocks and real estate are dangerous. The idea that you should be investing a huge amount of savings in something where if you lose your crypto key or your digital wallet, you'll lose everything with it, recourse to any kind of paper, any kind of court. I think it would terrify most of them. And secondly, social trust. Millennials are community-oriented, and they do not want to underwrite a system that epitomizes social distrust. Instead, they want a system that can be regulated, transparent, and safe. And indeed, toward the end of my presentation, I actually said there's a analogy here that just as Xers started Friendster and MySpace, which was an anonymous social media site, but it didn't come popular among millennials until Zuckerberg founded Facebook, which is an identity-rich site. Everyone goes on their own identity. It's going to be the same with digital currency. If we can figure out a way to make Bitcoin, and I think governments now are working ways to make a distributed ledger, means of exchange, and a couple of governments are actually actively working on that. When they figure out a way to do that, such that, it will be in compliance with know your customer laws and anti-money laundering laws and regulations. When you make it safe and when you make it transparent and when you make it accountable, I think millennials would be more than happy to step aboard.